Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Sam Priestley, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely wife, Emma.
Hello.
Today we got another question and answer session, and on a few episodes and over a couple of emails, I've asked listeners of the podcast and readers of my blog if they have any questions they want me to answer. So we've got quite a few come in, all rather varied and different, and it should be quite interesting. Emma's going to be asking the questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer them. Over to you, Emma.
So, first question, what books do you recommend?
Good question. I read a lot of books.
You do?
A few hundred a year, but most of them are fiction. But I do read quite a lot of kind of businessy books as well. In terms of recently, I've read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, which is the founder of Nike, and that was really good. He's a very good writer, so it makes a good story as well as lots of sort of useful advice. And what I found from there was I saw a lot of correlations between his business and one of the other businesses that I run, in that he started off by kind of selling someone else's product and then found it very difficult because he basically built up someone else's brand, and then at the end of the day had to shift over to creating his own brand and all the problems arising from that. I thought it was very good. It also gave me a lot of respect for that business because they just ran into nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. That was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Another one I read recently was The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, which kind of came at the correct time. So I was talking to a friend of mine about sort of embracing difficulties and not living too comfortable a life, which you can kind of see in my kind of end of year episodes at the end of last year. So a friend of mine recommended this book, said it was a bit of a game changer for him. And I read it and it kind of reinforced what I was already thinking and then gave me quite a bit more to think about as well. So I really recommend that. I actually bought it for your brother.
You did?
As his birthday present last weekend.
You did. So what kind of things are you going to change in your life because of it? Like small things?
I don't think it was so much. I kind of already had this idea of stuff I wanted to change, which is kind of this shift of mindset from trying to live as comfortable, as stress-free a life as possible to kind of embracing stuff I might not necessarily want to do or find quite annoying or difficult.
Right.
Because kind of the doing something difficult in itself has value, has worthwhile. So, I talk a lot about good versus bad stress.
Yeah.
That's one of my favourite topics, and the idea that short stress that is over quite quickly is quite good for you and makes you stronger, whereas long stress that's kind of always in the back of your mind, chronic stress is very bad for you.
Yeah, and you're in a position that you can choose not to be in pretty much any stress.
Exactly, and that's definitely something I've done over the last year or two, really, especially since we stopped travelling.
Yeah,
we've had a very comfortable life, and like to the point where I don't want to go up to London because I can't be bothered with travelling and that kind of stuff. Or there's loads of examples.
Yep.
Those are books I've read recently. In terms of kind of my all-time favourites, or the ones, I think there's kind of two metrics for like a good book. Like one is a objectively good book, one that I think is really useful and valuable. Another one is ones that have had a big impact on my life. So I think the 4-Hour Work Week ticks both those boxes. It had quite a big impact on my life, and it is a very good book. That's by Tim Ferriss. I really recommend that to anyone. Another one, which I don't think is necessarily that good a book, but did impact me quite a lot, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, something like that. I thought the book was a bit silly, really, but it did help me change my kind of mindset of thinking. And one of the things he pushes in there is that if you want to be what he calls rich, you shouldn't be working for money. So there's kind of all this stories about how instead of going to work at Waitrose or something, or Tesco's, when you're 16 or 17, you should go and work for free doing something where you learn the skills. And kind of, rich people, their money isn't tied to their time. And that kind of made me think about a few things, especially about how because I was kind of doing this consulting business at the time, a bit half-assed. And I was thinking, is it really worth me pushing
investing
that?
more time? Yeah.
I already kind of believed that, but I think it just reinforced. Again, a lot of this kind of reinforces what I'm already thinking.
Is that the book where you got the proverb about the fishing from?
No. So that proverb, I can't remember where I heard it. It's probably, I think people talk about it quite a lot. But the idea is that sort of a rich banker or something goes on holiday to Mexico, and there's a Mexican fisherman there who goes out in his little boat and fishes a fish and takes it home and cooks it. And the banker goes to him, well, why? Why don't you get some more? If you fish a few more fish, then you can go and sell them, and then with that money you can build a
better boat,
a little fisher fleet, get a better boat. And the fisherman goes, well, what would I do then? He goes, well, then you've got a big business, and you can hire loads of other people to do the fishing for you, and you can find big customers and sell and get your fish all across the world. He goes, and what would I do then? And then you'll be really rich, and you can retire and live a life of leisure. And he goes, and then what would you do then? And then he goes, then I'd move to Mexico and get a little fishing boat and go out and fish and enjoy my life. So kind of,
what's the point of it all?
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious what the takeaway from that is. No, that's almost the opposite to this guy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's very much, let's make loads and loads of money. But it's like, how do you make loads of money? How do you become a successful businessman? It's very like condescending to people who just want to have like a chilled
simple life.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But it did impact me in that picking what I use my time on shouldn't be reflected by how much it pays. Yes. And in fact, the ones that don't pay are often the better opportunities.
Yeah, definitely.
Other books that I found really good. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm very into learning and how to learn new skills. And that was a big impact on me. That one, it's a really good book as well. There's a few others in that sort of category. Bounce is a table tennis related one, and there's another one, Mastery, all of which are good. I think Outliers is the best and worth reading if you're interested in learning new skills. Another one that I found quite impactful on my life was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I haven't read it in years, but that one changed the way I kind of thought about things a lot. Most about how I interact with people. It's about changing yourself to be the sort of person who is influential, who people look up to, who people want you to be their best man at their wedding, to have a really positive impact on the people around you, as well as on your businesses.
That's really interesting. Wow, okay, so moving on to the next question. I think we could talk about books forever. If you had £1,000 to spend on a new business and wanted to make as much as possible, what would you do?
This is quite a good question. The question is really asking, if I was starting again from scratch and all I had was £1,000 and I wanted to get to a business kind of where I am now, or build it to a level that I'm happy with, how would I start? Well, there's a few things, aren't there? Because if we went back in time, then the answer would be quite different. I think it's if I was starting now in 2019 with all the knowledge I've got at the moment, but just £1,000, how would I start? £1,000 isn't really enough to start a brand, which is where I want to end up. So I think the best way to make money, like the best sort of businesses at the moment, are brand-based businesses, like my table tennis brands or my gym brand. Starting something like a blog does make good money with a little investment, but it takes a long time to get anywhere. So I think I'll be looking at something that makes money quickly, that not necessarily has long-term value, that maybe teaches me some skills that will be useful in the future. So what could I do there? I think to start off with, I'd try and roll that money up to a bit more. Match betting is a pretty obvious example.
That's what I was going to say. I thought that would be your first.
Yeah, it's not something that will ever be a big business.
No, but it could get you more money.
It's a very easy way to turn, say, £1,000 into like £3,000.
Yeah.
And that's probably where I'd leave it. I'd probably spend a couple of weeks, and it's very quick. So after 2 or 3 weeks, I could probably turn that 1,000 into about 3,000. And after that, there's very diminishing returns from match betting. So that would be it. I'd take that £3,000 and then I'd probably start doing maybe retail arbitrage on Amazon. Basically buying stuff and reselling it quickly. So that would either be going around kind of Tesco's or discount stores, finding stuff that's on offer and then sending it off to Amazon to sell.
Yeah, like a good brand or something.
Yeah. So if some board games were reduced in the Christmas sales, but we're selling for more money on Amazon, then I could just buy it and resell it. That's quite an easy way of churning money a little bit. And it teaches you a lot about Amazon. I think it teaches you about pricing. I think it'd also be interesting as a way to learn about where there might be opportunities in the marketplace. So by doing that, I'd be buying kind of across the board on Amazon. So it would give me an idea of what's going on in kind of every category on Amazon. So one day I might be buying board games, another day I might be buying toys, another day I might be buying books. And it would give me an idea where there might be opportunities that I could fit in a new brand.
Yeah.
And then once I got up to somewhere between £5,000 and £10,000, I would then take that knowledge and that kind of Amazon FBA account that's in good standing and start my own brand.
Yep.
So ideally something that I found doing the retail arbitrage.
A bit of a gap in the market.
Yeah. Then I would sort of go on, you can listen to the other episodes on how to start an Amazon FBA business or start your own brand. Find a factory who'll make it for me, do all the designs, get it out there. So the nice thing about each of those ones is they have their cap. So match betting, once you get to about £2,000 to £5,000 of profit, it's not really worth doing anymore. It gets a lot harder. Retail arbitrage, that's very much time for money kind of thing. Like you get out what you put in. There's not that much scalability. So there are people who are making £100,000 to £300,000 a year doing that. But that is kind of they're working extremely hard on that. Whereas building your own brand, something that's scalable and kind of the sky's the limit. And you've got a lot more protection there. You're not subject to like the winds of competition and things like that as much. So I think that's where we'd end up.
Yeah, sounds good. Why do you do the blog/podcast? How can we trust you or other online gurus? If you were doing so well, as you say you were, why are you spending the time telling us all about it?
I think I wouldn't classify myself as a guru. You can go back and you can read like my first ever blog post and see why I started the blog. But there was multiple reasons for it, all of which I think have value in themselves. So yes, there was a possibility that it could become a business in itself and make money, but that wasn't the primary one. So one of the other reasons I started it was because I wanted to learn how to get better at writing. I think writing is a very important skill, whatever you're doing, and I wasn't very good at it, and I thought a blog would be a good place to do that. I wanted to have a journal of the stuff I was doing. In the back of my mind, I thought, if it all collapses at some point, I've got no kind of proof of what I've done. I can just tell people about it, but I don't have a CV kind of thing. And I thought an online blog, kind of journaling all my businesses and experiences would be a very good online CV. I also thought there might be a chance it might make money. I've been reading quite a few other bloggers, people like Pat Flynn at Smart Passive Income, who are doing really well. And learning how to do online marketing is quite an important skill, and that was a good way to do that. Now, have those reasons changed over the years? That was back in 2014. Yeah, a little bit. I think the online CV portion of it is less important.
Because I remember you talking about that a lot when we first started.
Yeah, I think that's less important. It's kind of grown a bit beyond that. And I thought I might get like job offers and sort of business opportunities from the blog, and I haven't really got that much out of it. I thought that would be more valuable than it has been. But it has actually turned into a bit of a moneymaker, which is quite nice.
Which you didn't expect.
Which I didn't really expect, no. I remember about a year in, I said, if it gets to about £1,000 a month, I'd be pretty happy with that. And it kind of shot past that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And why am I doing the podcast? It was partly because the reasons I'm doing my blog have changed a bit, in that I've got a bit bored of writing blog posts and the work that goes into it, being focused on other things. And I thought doing a podcast would be an easier way to get sort of my thoughts and stuff out there.
Yeah, and you like change, don't you?
I like change.
You don't
I
like the routine of doing
things.
the same thing all the time.
And I listen to loads of podcasts myself. I find it quite an interesting medium. So how do you trust someone like me? How do you know that what I'm telling you is true? I think it's worth, looking at people's motivations. So I don't sell anything. Most of my blog posts have no way of making money. Kind of the monetization side, like none of these podcasts have got ways to make money on them yet. The monetization side of what I've been doing has very much been a secondary part. And most of the stuff I'm doing hasn't been for other people. It's been kind of for myself. You do hear people say, oh, I'm teaching online people about starting businesses because I just love imparting knowledge, or I want to make the world a better place. And those people I'm pretty skeptical about. That sounds like a load of nonsense to me. And that's not the reason I'm doing it. Yeah, it is nice sort of influencing people and helping them start a business. But as I said, a lot of the reasons were quite selfish to begin with, which was learning skills of writing, maybe earning a bit more money, and kind of that online journal, online CV type stuff.
Yeah, and I think around the trust thing, you built that trust by telling people about your businesses, the good and the bad.
Yeah, I'm not telling you how to do things. I am writing about my experiences.
Exactly.
Which is a bit different. Now, there are gurus out there who...
I've never had a business.
Or they'll tell you about their business and it's hard to verify whether they're true or not. And yeah, there are definitely people who've never had a business who try and, which is a bit strange in itself. But particularly there are people whose main business is the online teaching stuff. And they're particularly people who run like online courses, things like that, which is one of the reasons I'm quite skeptical of online courses. I'm definitely changing my mind and starting to think they're more valuable than I used to. But
it's hard to find the valuable ones.
Yeah, and you have to be quite careful when you pick them, because a lot of people might have started off creating, saw about Amazon FBA. There's loads of Amazon FBA courses out there. So people have built themselves an Amazon FBA business that's done okay, and then they build a course on the side, and that course might go on and do a lot better, and that might turn into their proper business. So you do need to be a little bit careful. One final thing to say really is that a lot of people assume that creating an online teaching business, online guru business is easy. And it's not. It's a business in itself. In fact, I'd say it's easier to build an Amazon FBA business than it is to build an online guru business.
Yeah, I mean, to get a captive audience, I think is really tough.
It is really tough.
Because it's so competitive.
And so for some of these people who've got these huge audiences, that is proof in itself that they might kind of know what they're talking about in terms of online marketing and things like that, because they've had to employ all those sort of things which can be used for whatever it is they're trying to teach you about.
Practice what they're preaching.
I think Pat Flynn's a bit of an example of that, where he started off by having this online academy to teach you about something to do with architecture, I think. I can't really remember. And that never really made that much money. But now he's got this huge blog about passive income and making money online that makes a huge amount of money. And kind of most of his advice is from what he's done building that site to teach you how to make passive income.
Which is what you want to know.
Yeah, so there is a bit of... It works both ways,
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, that's a bit of a convoluted answer. If you don't want to listen to me, don't listen to me.
Can't leave it.
Take what you want.
So talking about audiences, moving on to the next question. You already have an audience through your blog that you can sell new products to. How does someone starting from nothing succeed?
That's a good question. I did think that if I could build an audience for the blog, then I would have people I can use to push new products to. So let's say I launched a bottle of gin. I could get that initial momentum by having like a list of fans who might go and buy it. That hasn't actually been the case when I launched, definitely. So my first businesses, hardly anyone in my audience were interested in at all. So table tennis. I've only sold a handful of table tennis bats from kind of the millions of views I've had on the blog in terms of, work put in versus sales it's translated to. It hasn't really made sense.
Yeah.
Same with the gin, really. I think maybe that's been a bit more popular, but maybe only 15 to 20 bottles have been sold through sort of readers on my blog. So I don't think I'm starting from that different a position to anyone else. Like my audience, yes, it helps launching a podcast, which is kind of similar, but it hasn't really helped in launching a gin brand.
So the question was around how does someone starting from nothing succeed?
Yeah, I think basically everything that I talk about in my blog posts and on this podcast are still perfectly relevant to you. So when I write about my experiences, say, trying to market the gin brand, or in my monthly report where I talk about the problems and the successes we've had, they're as applicable to anyone else as they are to me, because me having an audience doesn't affect those businesses.
Right. How did those around you, talking about friends and family, react to the following? You not getting a proper job after university and pursuing gambling, your decision to quit the lucrative gambling job, and you leaving the UK to become a digital nomad. I wonder how your mum and dad describe what you do to their friends. Generally, how much negativity and scepticism have you dealt with? Or maybe people have been really supportive.
That's a good question. To quickly summarise my career for those who don't know, when I was at university, I got involved in match betting, which is when you find welcome bonuses for casinos and sports bookies, and you basically take advantage of them and try and get as much money out of them as possible. I did that at university, and then instead of getting a job, I just continued doing gambling related stuff, kind of moved on to arbitrage, which I'll link to all this kind of stuff and what they mean in the show notes, which are at sampriestley.com. But yeah, so I took a bit of a strange route. Everyone else on my course was going off and getting jobs at banks and at Google and places like that. And I decided to move to London and start gambling. I did that for many years, and then in 2014, I decided to retire. So I had enough. I didn't need the money I was making anymore. And I thought I'd quit and focus on other things, such as writing my blog. We actually got this question through a little over a week ago. And then the day after, we went to visit my parents, and we were going to ask them the answers, what they thought.
We forgot.
And we forgot. We didn't do it. But I think we know the answer. My parents keep their cards to their chest quite a lot. They're generally very supportive, and they only really tell you what they really think of what you're doing after you stop doing it. So I remember when I was 17, I started driving a motorbike. And then when I started going to in my first term of university, I took up rugby. And it was only after I stopped driving a motorbike and stopped doing rugby that my dad and my mum said to me, "Oh, I'm so glad you've given that up." Because my dad is a neuroscientist who specialises in spinal injury, and a large percent of his patients and the people he does research on have got spinal injury from driving a motorbike or from playing rugby. So they were the two biggest causes. And boxing, which was something else I'd taken up around that time as well. And so they were all very supportive while I was doing these, but I think inside they couldn't wait for me to get over that phase in my life.
Yeah, they were terrified.
I think that's probably what was true about starting the gambling. Because it was quite a slow process, me doing that full time. I never quite gave up on a normal career until quite far down. So to begin with, it was in my first year of university, in the holidays, I got a job as a caretaker full time when I was earning £250 a week. Then in my second year, I decided if I can make that much from match betting, then I wouldn't get a job. So I spent the summer doing that. So that was kind of their first glimpse into this world on gambling. But from their point of view, I was still at university, I was still studying. It was just something that made a little bit of money on the side. I think my parents probably sat me down and had if you ever get into any debt, don't go to a loan shark, come to us if you need any help, type thing, which was very nice of them. In fact, they give me that chat
Quite a lot. I've
even
heard that
recently.
chat.
Yeah. When I didn't get a grad scheme job, what I did do was I did sign up to do a master's. I did an extra year at university, which I didn't work that hard on, but then spent that time basically working full time on the gambling stuff. But from their point of view, I was working on a master's.
I was going to say, at any point during this, did your parents have any idea you were doing gambling?
I think they always knew, yeah.
So you told them?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was working from their house all that summer in the first.
Right.
And I had a group of friends who would come around every day and work with me.
Okay.
So it was quite obvious what we were doing. And I tried to explain it to them and they never really understood. And my mum in particular is very sceptical about money-making schemes. Anything to do with the stock market or any sort of money-making scheme, she's very sceptical because in her family she's had quite a few people who've lost everything because of stuff like that, including her own father. So I think they were quite worried, but they were very supportive, which looking back, I'm not sure if I was in their position, I would have been. By the time we went travelling, they just got over the fact. It'd been so many years of me doing my own thing and it not come crashing, tumbling down, that they were just happy enough to let me live my weird life.
Well, I don't know. What was their reaction to you saying you were going to travel the world and work online and leave your flat share in London?
I have no idea.
No, I have no idea either.
I'm sure I told them.
You'd like to think you told them.
Yeah, but also it's the sort of thing I do where I just go and
I know,
not have told them.
The reason I'm laughing is because Sam's quite famous in his family for not saying what amazing new business you started or new project you're working on or new trip you're going on. It just doesn't, it just happens and you kind of sometimes mention it afterwards.
It's one of the things that only since I started writing the blog that they've really got any idea what goes on a day-to-day. Yeah, so to answer your question, my parents have always been very supportive, but not in a you should do this kind of way. Yeah. In a do what you want and make your own mistakes.
And then what about friends' reactions? So supportive, sceptical?
Yeah, I don't know.
You have quite a mix of friends, some of which are doing very similar things to you and some of which are doing very different things to you.
I was quite lucky that I had a group of friends who were all doing the same thing. So we all made the decisions together. But then one of them, who was making huge amounts of money, like more than I was from gambling, decided to go and get a grad job. He went and worked for Barclays.
Which I still don't understand.
And he would work full-time at Barclays and then would work all night on his gambling stuff. And then eventually, after I think 2 or 3 years at Barclays, when he finished the grad scheme, he then quit that and then moved full-time onto the gambling stuff.
And why do you think he was the one that went into a grad scheme and no one else did?
I don't know.
Do you think he felt the pressure?
He has a stronger work ethic than the rest of us. So I think everyone else was thinking, well, it's one or the other.
Yes,
he was thinking I can do both.
Yeah.
And he did do both. Good for him.
Very impressive.
Yeah, I still can't quite believe it. And what's funny is, so he teamed up with another friend of mine and they created a little syndicate together where they would work. And one of the things they do is they track their time. And one of them was doing this full time. And he was working at Barclays and doing the gambling on top. And he still clocked up more hours, which is crazy thinking back. He was always someone who had a little bit of an addictive personality.
He was addicted to work.
Well, not necessarily to work. He was just addicted. He just got really deep into things. So before doing that, he was really deep into collecting like films. And so he had the biggest collection of films and TV shows of anyone at university. And then he spent a lot of money on it. And then as soon as he stopped doing that and moved over to the match betting and gambling stuff, he just did that and threw himself into that.
Well, you've got some interesting friends.
Yeah. Have I received a lot of negativity? Yes, I have. Not overtly. We're English. Nobody really says what they think to your face.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely there's been a lot of kind of passive-aggressive comment. I think they were waiting for karma to come round and for me to lose everything. And then when that didn't happen, I think I have a few friends who would probably not even realise they're thinking this themselves, but probably think that it's undeserved and it's unfair that they're working so hard and I get to lounge around recording podcasts where I talk about myself.
Oh, I definitely have a few of those as well.
Yeah, and fair enough to them because it is unfair. Hopefully they won't just treat that as a life is unfair, but will then maybe look at some of the stuff I'm doing, maybe which is a little bit different to them, maybe take some inspiration and try and make their own way. Yeah, same. I think lots of my friends have some amazing skills and some amazing hobbies, going back to turning your hobby into a business podcast, that they could definitely make a successful business out of. To answer one of the questions which I missed out is, what did my friends and family think when I quit a profitable gambling business and decided to start a blog and focus on the table tennis business? And I didn't really tell anyone of my friends and family. It was kind of a very internal decision. But one person who I did obviously tell was my business partner who I was doing the gambling with. and he kind of flipped out. He started stomping around flat we were in. Going, what is wrong with you? Do you hate money? You've changed so much. I was like, no, I don't hate money. I just got enough of it.
I've never heard this story.
Yeah, he was not very happy.
Well, I can imagine.
Yeah, well, because to be fair, because I wasn't saying he should stop doing it, but that is what happened.
That is the implication of you saying.
Because me stopping meant he then decided to stop as well. And he stopped earlier than he wanted to, basically.
Because it was on your terms, not his.
Yeah, and he could have continued doing stuff himself. And I think he did for a bit. And maybe he still does a little bit now, but once there was no one to do it with, he lost a lot of the interest in it.
Yeah, well, he's a real people person. He really thrives chatting and working with other people in a team, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Whereas you're very comfortable working on your own. Right, well, should we move on to the next question?
Let's move on.
It links to that first question. What are people's biggest misconceptions about you?
I think that it is that I am some sort of wheeler dealer. Because when people ask me what I do, I say, oh, a bit of this, a bit of that. List off like 5 or 6 different businesses. And people think that I'm, I don't know, down the car boot sale, negotiating.
Flogging your wares.
When actually I hate negotiating.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because there aren't many people who do multiple businesses.
Yeah.
Like, people have one focus and they spend a lot of time on that. So I mean, that's it. And it does like make me a little bit sad. Because I'm always thinking, what should I write on my like Instagram handle? I've got like 2 sentences to describe who I am. How do I write that without sounding like someone that I'm not? Yeah. And I haven't yet come up with an answer.
Well, I think it's something that's constantly evolving, isn't it? The more podcasts you listen to, the more blog posts, the more things you watch on TV, you find out about other people doing similar things to you and the language they use to describe themselves.
Mm.
Right, so let's move on to the next question. So, I've always enjoyed your emails, but here's a truly basic question. How does one follow a blog? Or more to the point, where is it? Is that what you call the email that I receive about once a month from you? Or is there some other communication from you available elsewhere? Please clarify for this old dog.
It might sound like a basic question, but it is quite a good question. Because the answer is there aren't good ways to follow blogs, which does annoy me a little bit. Following a podcast like this is quite easy. You can just click subscribe on iTunes or on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever you're on. But following a blog's a bit harder. So yes, when I say thank you for following the blog, I mean thank you for reading my emails when I send you my monthly update. And I mean thank you for just logging on every now and again to see if I got some new posts. Because emails will often go into the spam, which is a big problem. I think about half the people I email don't get them. Just because that's how your email provider works.
And you don't send emails out for every blog post you write?
I don't send emails out for every blog post I write either. I do for most of them, but some I don't, yeah.
And then what about...
I don't want to spam people with loads of emails, that's the problem. 1 a month isn't really spam, is it? 2 a week would be. So I don't send an email out for every podcast because you'd get so many of them. Yeah. And I'd feel like a
I think that's
spammer.
Fair because it's easier to subscribe to a podcast.
It's very easy to subscribe to a podcast. But yeah, if you want to follow a blog, so when I follow other people's blogs, what I'll do is I'll just log on every now and again. I'll just go to samprecy.com or log into that every couple of days, see if they've got anything new out. There are apps you can get which will follow the RSS feeds of blogs. So you can get an app where you will input the details of all the blogs you follow and it will collate them all in one place. Then when they have a new blog post, it will appear on there. But that's quite a techie solution. I'm sorry there aren't better options than that.
And then what about following you on social media?
You can follow me on social media. You can follow me on Instagram, SF Priestley.
And that's a mix of new blog posts, new podcasts, and things that you're doing day to day.
It's a lot of day-to-day stuff. But again, the problem with that is that if you follow a lot of people, you might well miss updates from me. So none of these options are... The best one is if you want to follow the podcast, because then you will actually see it in your feed.
Yeah.
But all the other ones, it's a bit harder to guarantee that you're going to see every update. But as I said, thanks for following. Thanks for making the effort of still keeping up, even though there's not a good way to to follow the blog.
Right, moving on. So the next question, I've been doing match betting, which is how I found your blog, and I'm wondering what the next step would be for me to make a sustainable income.
Well, there's lots of things you could do, and kind of depends what you mean by sustainable income, and depends how well your match betting is going. If your match betting is going great and you're making loads of money, you can invest your extra profits into income generating investments, which would then earn you a sustainable income. And I have a few friends that's what they do. They've made a career out of just doing loads of match betting and the gambling that leads on from that, and then just invest the rest of the money, and the plan is to live off that eventually. What you probably mean is, how do I get away from gambling? How do I turn the skills I've got from match betting and the income I've generated from that into other types of businesses? I would say I still think product-based businesses such as like building a brand and then sending it through the Amazon FBA network is probably one of the best ways to do it. And I will put a link to some of my articles about that in the show notes, which is samprecy.com. But there's loads of other things. You can start writing a blog, one of the things I did. I think that kind of this new media type stuff, YouTube videos, podcasts, blogs, Instagram accounts, Snapchat, Twitch, all that kind of stuff is just going to get bigger and bigger. So while you're earning money from one thing, you could invest your time and energy into something else that could then turn into a big thing. So something like the blog, I started it for a bunch of reasons, didn't make any money for about a year. And then by the time it was 18 months in, it was earning whatever it was, £5,000 a month or something like that. And if I had then turned that into a full-time business, I'm sure it would have been making a lot more by now. I chose not to, but that was a personal choice. And so it is possible to, and at the time everyone was saying blogging is too saturated and it's dead or whatever. You just got to really invest and just go for it. So there's lots of things, and I've got loads of articles on the blog about it. You can read, I've got a few other podcasts. There's one about businesses that I think are going to be big in 2019. There's there's a few different things. I'll put some links in the show notes. If you're talking about it from a gambling point of view, where you can go after match betting, my route was I did match betting and I went to casino bagging, which is very similar to match betting. So match betting is when you make money from sports bookies by taking advantage of their bonuses that they offer you when you sign up. So there's a similar thing you could do with casinos, which is called casino bagging. Again, I'll put a link to it on the show notes. Then there's arbitrage, which is where similar to match betting but without the bonus, where you're just looking for places where different bookies disagree on odds and you can lock in a profit. And then from there, there's also something called value betting, which I'm writing a blog post about at the moment and will hopefully be out within a week or two. And once that's out, I'll add it to the show notes. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do. But generally, what I like is that match betting provides you quite quick income that you can then use to free up your time and a bit of money to work on other businesses which have a lot longer time frame. So if you want to start a brand, let's say you want to start your own gin business, something like that will take 6 months to a year before it's really making any money at all. And so having something like match betting, which will make money from day one to keep you going while you then invest in these other things, which could then be a long-term sustainable business, I think is a really good way to go.
Sounds good.
So if you have any more questions, feel free to email me at hello@samprecy.com. And as always, if you like the podcast, I would really appreciate some feedback. If it's positive, please leave me a 5-star review. If it's not so positive, then email me and tell me what I can improve. Thank you very much.
Bye.